And Risa experienced Lithuanian brutality firsthand. I'm going to ask Risa a few questions. Risa, you were born in Memel, which was in Prussia, and your family fled Memel when Hitler invaded and went to Kovno. Can you tell us a bit about your family life in Kovno before 1941, what your life was like, your family, your neighborhood?
Well, my name was Risa Silbert, and my parents were Tevye Israel Kagan. My mother was Irla Kagan. I had a brother, Hessel Kagan. My sister, Henny Kagan, you may know as Henny Hittner, some of you, who passed away 13 years ago, and myself. I was 9 years old when the trouble started in Memel, which in Lithuanian is called Klaipėda, the main port town of Lithuania. We were strictly Orthodox Jewish family. We went to German schools, and when Hitler approached that he was going to occupy this Memel Gebiet, I don't know the English word for it, that we had to leave the German schools, and they quickly arranged for us to have opened up a Jewish school. We had, my parents and us, we had to flee Memel on the 23rd of March 1939 as the Germans moved in. My parents went to Kovno, Kaunas in Lithuanian, and my dad opened a little business. I want to mention something. I will not sit near that flag. I will never stand up for Lithuanian anthem. My hatred against them, what they did to us. When the war broke on with Germany and Lithuania on the 22nd of June 1941, within a matter of a couple of days, on the 25th of June 1941, Lithuanians came in, some Germans, they went in even in Lithuania properly yet, and arrested my father. They took him away. They took him and my brother, who was 17 years old. They took him and they were taken to the 7th Fort in Kaunas. About 500 men were taken. A couple escaped, and that's how the story got out. And they killed them. Fathers buried sons, and sons buried fathers. About 10-15 years ago, there was an article of a man who built a building on the site where they were killed, and he wanted to know what was underneath the ground, and he found rings, and then unfortunately with my moving, I lost the paper. On the 15th of July 1941, before that there was proclamation that all Jews had to go to the ghetto in Slobodka, and my mother, on the 15th of July, managed to get a horse and cart to take us to Slobodka. As we were moving out, our neighbors were clapping and enjoying the sight. Now, please remember, I was a young girl, and I just watched them clapping that the Jews were taken away. The area where we lived was not exactly, we had very few Jewish families. But my dog, Jutska, he was crying and running with us, but the people were clapping. Now, all this impression of a child. In In the ghetto, we were given a room in a house, and my Henny had to go and work, and my mother had to go and work. My mother managed to find it. Nobody was allowed to learn anything, but my mother managed to find an ex-teacher, and very quietly and privately she gave me lessons. The dogs used to come and look for their Jewish owners. If you went near the fence of the ghetto, you can be assured you would be shot by the Lithuanian guards.
Risa, thank you very much for that. I know it's very painful for you to relate your story. It gets harder as the years wear on, but I think you know how important it is for you to share the reality of what the Lithuanians did to your family and to all the people in your town. So thank you. We really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to come and share your story. It's very important. Thank you.
But my dog, Tutska, he was crying and running with us, but the people were clapping. Now, all this impression of a child. In the ghetto, we were given a room in a house, and my Henny had to go and work, and my mother had to go and work. My mother managed to find it. Nobody was allowed to learn anything, but my mother managed to find an ex-teacher, and very quietly and privately she gave me lessons. The dogs used to come and look for their Jewish owners. If you went near the fence of the ghetto, you can be assured you would be shot by the Lithuanian guards.
Risa, thank you very much for that. I know it's very painful for you to relate your story. It gets harder as the years wear on, but I think you know how important it is for you to share the reality of what the Lithuanians did to your family and to all the people in your town. So thank you. We really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to come and share your story. It's very important. Thank you. My next question is to Grant. Grant, in the middle of the table is a flag. Can you tell us the significance of that flag, please?
Thank you. There's a Lithuanian flag here because there's no Lithuanian representative. We've had approximately 40 events in Australia. The Lithuanian embassy has been too busy to attend a single one. They will attend every Yom HaShoah. They will attend a Jewish 2-year-old birthday party. They'll attend a bris because they want to show engagement with Jews. They want to virtue signal and say how much they regret that Nazis murdered the Jews. They don't have any recollection that Lithuanians did anything. According to them, every Lithuanian was trying to rescue a Jew. We have exposed a massive government conspiracy to rewrite the Holocaust into a palatable narrative where the Nazis were the murderers and the Lithuanians were the good rescuers. In fact, 80% of Lithuania's Jews had been murdered before the Nazis devised the final solution. So them boycotting us in Australia, they've boycotted us in America and England and Israel and America as well. They will not engage in a bilateral conversation because we've exposed them committing massive Holocaust fraud. So I ask you, if you encounter Lithuanian government officials, ask them a simple question. Yes, no answer, because anything else they will evade, distort, twist, manipulate. Ask them, was Sylvia's grandfather a Holocaust perpetrator? If they answer you no, then they are clearly lying to you. If they answer you, I don't know, they are clearly lying to you. If they answer yes, they have admitted to the largest Holocaust inversion, distortion, and revision conspiracy in Europe. They've identified their own national values. We didn't do it for them. They have shown that 80 years after the Shoah, there is zero truth in Lithuania. And now I can remove this flag.
Thank you. Grant, why has it taken us 3 generations to confront this horror, and why don't our parents and grandparents talk about it?
Our grandparents had PTSD. Our grandparents couldn't talk about it. When the survivors came out of the camps or out of the ghettos or out of the labor camp, you know, even when they went to Israel, people said, we don't believe it. You know, we Jews don't have that mentality that people can come and murder. It's not within our frame of reference. And even the stories were so horrific that the survivors weren't believed. So the survivors were told, suck it up, be silent, get on with life. And they were so traumatized, they were not able to talk to us. Everybody here that grew up in South Africa or with survivor parents or grandparents remembers that they would all be talking amongst themselves, and the moment the children walked in, there'd be silence. And they were trying to protect us. That's why we didn't know. And it's only through the research that we're finding out the details that Risa is telling us. The data's all been there. It's been there since the very beginning, but it's just been a few academics that knew, and it's the entirety of the Lithuanian government with an entire foreign ministry.
Generous sponsors and supporters, of which there are many. You can see the banner over there on the side. We did have a screen with all our major sponsors, but it's not there anymore. A big thank you to Bernie Sharrock, who was the initiator of bringing the whole Jacques tour to Australia. You've really done an amazing job. Bernie is with us tonight, and over nearly 40 events have taken place in Australia, starting in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth, which is quite a remarkable achievement. Over 6,000 people have been reached, which is quite a remarkable achievement as well. Sylvia, Michael and Grant, thank you for coming to Australia to enlighten and educate us on the authentic facts of how the Holocaust unfolded in Lithuania and the distortion and denial that frighteningly still exist today. This is your last leg of your Australian tour. You've had a whirlwind 2 weeks, and we really thank you for still being so awake and so willing to share your story. Thank you. Sylvia, you are a true Eshet Chayil, a remarkable woman. You emphasize what is good and just in humanity. We applaud your incredible courage and your efforts to challenge the official World War II narrative in Lithuania and to secure historical justice, going against your family, friends, your country, and your history. I listened to your inspirational interview with Sky News, Outsiders, which was watched by 60,000 viewers. Your message is being heard. We will now begin our panel discussion. I will ask a few questions, then we'll open it up to the floor, so please hold your questions. My first question is for Michael, sitting next to me, Michael Pressman, director of this movie. Michael, you came out of retirement to make this documentary. How did you hear about Sylvia and Grant's stories, and what led you to turn their stories into a film?
Hello everybody, it's so lovely to be in your beautiful city, and what a community you are. I'm so impressed and I really appreciate it. It's a great honor to be here. Like many South Africans, our family had completely avoided the Lithuanian Holocaust. Of course, we discussed the Holocaust, but not the Lithuanian Holocaust. I think because it was just too terrible to discuss, really. And how can you bring up children when you've got that kind of baggage and terror lurking around in your consciousness? But I did go back to Lithuania in 2019. I was persuaded by a cousin, and I was saying Kaddish at the northern town of Virgin, which was featured there. And there was this shroud over this memorial, this lovely sort of graded metal thing, and the shroud went down just before the Kaddish. And I found myself staring at scores of Kretsmers, my entire family. Just almost all of us were murdered on the 8th of August 1941. Anyway, it's a long story, and I won't go into how I did it, but I made a little film which later I was unhappy with. I realized I was following the Lithuanian narrative, because we were surrounded by minders and government officials and nice people who said how much they missed the missing Jews, poor missing Jews, all that. I fell for everything. But then I got wise to it, and I realized there was a counter-narrative. There was a true narrative going on. And I searched for it, and I found two exceptional people to tell that story. One was Grant, who for 30 years had been working by himself, funding himself, and really was almost a lone voice in the Jewish world, objecting to the denials of the Lithuanian government. And then I met Sylvia, and her courage just shone like a light. And because I'd made this first film, which didn't tell the truth really, I regarded it very much as my personal responsibility to do another one that did tell the truth. And to be quite frank with you, I think like these two, I just became utterly obsessed with the quest for truth, and not just truth, honor. I was deeply offended at the way they insulted us, abused us after everything they'd done. And I thought, you are not going to get away with this. I will do everything I can to resist you. My only skill was to make films. I'd been a TV producer many years before, 20 years before. But this was my only weapon to combat their lies. And that's what I did. I spent 2 years doing nothing else. I expected the film to die on YouTube, and to see that it is in a way united our community, particularly the South African Letva community, is a reward beyond measure. In a way, I don't really care what the Lithuanians do. I don't even give them that much of my heart. But I do care what we do. And by coming here tonight, we are sending a message to them. We are resisting your stupid lies. We will not tolerate it. And that's why I'm so proud to be here and so happy to see you all.
And Michael, why did you call the movie Jacques?
Obviously, it's an echo of the pamphlet, the letter written by Emile Zola in the Dreyfus case. The thing about the Dreyfus case, it was such an obvious case of anti-Semitism. As a journalist or as a film producer, I struggled with the narrative. How do I tell this story? You know, there are many ways of doing it. You could be the all-knowing journalist, which didn't seem appropriate. And eventually, one day it hit me. The only way to tell this story is to give the victims back their voice. And what would they say? They would say, J'accuse. They would say, just like Zola said, us on their head and denying what they did. And to me, that continues it. It was a way of diminishing that. But there was a further thing. I believe what they did was a Chilul Hashem. What they wanted us, in our last minutes of pain, suffering, bereavement, terror, they wanted us to say, there is no God. That 3,600 years of Jewish culture, civilization, and prayer were of no value whatsoever. They wanted us to say, I am not a Jew. And looking around today, they failed.
I'd like to add something to that, please. If you go on to Times of Israel, I've written many, many articles trying to expose different aspects of the story. I think the article title was, Is There Anything Worse Than a Nazi? If you go and look that up, you know, there are multiple accounts where Jews would go to Nazis and say, please kill us because the Lithuanians are taking such delight in torturing and raping first. Can you just kill us and end the suffering? It's inconceivable when you actually study the material. And again, the material's been out there since the beginning. when you study the material, it is so horrific that one cannot actually comprehend this as human behavior. And then when they tell us that the very people that perpetrated these atrocities are the heroes, the dehumanization to the victims is total. The insult and contempt towards us is absolute. And that's why when I see the Lithuanian ambassador go to a Yom HaShoah event to virtue signal how sad they are while his government is doing this, it actually makes my head want to explode.
Thank you. The next question is for Michael. Has Jacques been shown to Lithuanian audiences, and if so, how has it impacted their views on Lithuania's role in the Holocaust?
We did manage to get it onto a sort of quasi-pirate internet station, but the uptake has not been considerable. Not many people have watched it. We know they're aware of it. We know the government has watched it. And there have been a lot of developments in recent months. The United States and German government issued a very strong policy statement condemning Lithuania. They didn't specifically state it was Lithuania, but there's no doubt that that's where they were intending to criticize. Then a couple of weeks later, in the middle of the night, they erected a scaffold around the main bust of Noreka on the Central the Institute of Sciences. And they took it down and they spirited it off in the middle of the night to some fascist hideout under the pretext that they were going to clean the building, so they had to remove it. It hasn't been put back on, and I suppose we could say that this is some sort of victory. But for me, it's not a victory if they say they're doing it to clean the building. What we want is truth, not some stupid gesture in that regard. And I understand there have been some very recent developments with other things. Perhaps Grant's more knowledgeable about this. Perhaps you'd tell us, Grant.
They actually re-erected scaffolding today. So we don't know if they're going to put the NATO summit was held in Lithuania on July 11 and 12. And the US government said that President Biden would not go there if the monument was there, because President Biden was not going to walk in a city that is full of monuments for Holocaust perpetrators. So they had no choice but to remove it, but they removed it with a lie. I mean, it's more contempt. I want you to understand the contempt and the insult they display towards us on a daily basis. So now, apparently, the scaffolding put up this morning, and I don't know if they're going to put it back up, or if they're going to put something else there, or if in fact they are cleaning the building. But it was clearly a pretext. The other thing, I'll be writing about it in the next couple of days as soon as I have time to actually sit in front of my computer and type it out. They had a meeting about putting up a new monument in Lithuania for a man that called for our murder. Now, I don't have all of his details, but I actually have his speeches that he delivered calling for our annihilation. I have the newspaper reports about it. There's no question about it. And the government had a meeting within the past week about erecting a monument for him. It simply says that we are not human beings. Your children are not human beings, because if somebody can murder us, it is of no consequence. Well, I will tell you, as I live and breathe, we are of consequence, and our lives do matter, and they will not insult us, and they will not demean their victims, and they will not get away with their fraud while we are here.
Sylvia, you say at the end of the movie, the only way for Lithuania to be high again is for you to face this, for Lithuania to face this. How can this be done?